Hi, I'm Britt Ekland. Welcome to 1971. Tonight there's going to be movies and comedies. But first, let me tell you about my year. My favorite year.
Just move on up. Move on up. We move on up. Watch out, but just move on up. We move on up. Move on up.
1971 is when I played Anna in Get Carter. I was sexy. It was violent. It was the best film of the year. I've never looked back. This is the story of that and everything else that happened in 1971. Oh, but you must remember, it was a mad year.
Everybody raise both your hands in the air! Everybody, everywhere! I said I clap your hands!
Oh, that's me.
Everybody clap your hands! Yeah, yeah, yeah! I said my, my. I said I love you with it, baby. All right!
Let's begin with something that every boy and girl wanted. It's big, it's rubber, and it's orange.
Oh, space hoppers, yeah.
All you do is sit on top, grab the handle, and bounce.
In the early 70s, the toy industry was very buoyant.
Why don't you try measuring the bounce of different kinds of balls and see what you can find out?
One of the main board directors of the company was on holiday and was bouncing around on a mooring buoy, which is essentially egg-shaped. And by holding a piece of rope at the top, he was sitting on this and bouncing around, showing his children. It's one of those impromptu things. He came back buzzing with this idea that technology could make it, and he was full of the marketing potential because it was entirely new.
Like the kangaroo, you're always one jump ahead.
To be fair to the manufacturers of the space hopper, it was never intended as a long-term transport aid.
Distance travelled to effort used ratio was just frankly not worth it, you know.
They were mainly intended for just arsing about in the garden, for want of a better word. That's what it should have said on the bottom.
By 1971, we had made several millions, and in this particular year, 1971, Space Hopper won the Acclaimers Toy of the Year award, which was absolutely great because it's really a basic, fundamental, simple, low-tech, even at the time, toy.
Get set, go! And they're off.
Still a lot of adrenaline feeling when I think about it inside, to have been part of such a successful product.
Well, Space Hopper just looked daft. You know, if you can imagine, like, getting 6 or 7 of your mates all going along on this Space Hopper and being able to jump quite high.
There were no mechanisms to go wrong. There were no batteries to replace. It really was a very basic toy for children to use.
We'd all try and expand them as much as we can by taking them to the garage, and the garage used to go mad because they said, oh, if it explodes, it's going to make the petrol pumps blow.
I just have this vision of many of them still around, albeit leading very inactive lives, you know, lurking in dark corners of garages and loft spaces somewhere around.
Saturday morning TV began in 1971. 4 furry monsters were the future of children's television, and they were the Banana Splits.
1971, I can remember very, very well.
because I had a birthday party and I had a pirate hat, and Francis Cameron turned up with the same one. I was very upset. But I can remember that the Banana Splits was on because we all stopped to watch it.
They had a Banana Splits cartoon and a Banana Splits people that would run around in those suits.
The Banana Splits.
That was cool. One banana, two banana, three banana, four.
4 bananas make a bunch and so do many more. Over hill and highway the banana buggies go, coming up to bring you the Banana Split Show.
Na 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 na.
4 banana, 3 banana, 2 banana, 1. All bananas playing in the bright warm sun.
Blowing like a whistle, popping like a cork, Fleagle, Bingo, Drooper and Snot.
Bingo, bingo, Drooper and Snort.
Banana Splits was like from the height of that kind of Ronan Martin's laughing, mad television. We were brought up Saturday mornings at a kind of Second World War by proxy with Arthur Askey films and Flash Gordon. We had the childhoods of our parents, and then suddenly things like this would drop in.
We said, look, this had to look like a living cartoon, because everybody was afraid at that time of live action, because there was no live action. It was all cartoons. No one knew really how to put people inside of suits at the time, you know, as well as we did. We've been doing this with our puppet shows for years. Most people thought our puppets were lifelike. They didn't know they were little people running around inside these puppets.
Cracking theme tune, though.
Every Saturday, the Banana Splits invited us round to their place for a mad morning of stupid sketches, crazy cartoons and dubious jokes.
Dear Drooper, I live on a big ranch. How can I count all the cows quickly? Easy. Just count their hoofs and divide by 4.
The Banana Splits had a very cool car, which was like a sort of 6-wheeler type thing, which they drove around.
I'll never forget how desperately me and my brothers wanted one of those 6-wheeled vehicles. It was the ultimate high, wasn't it? A little car of your own.
And I also remember that there was a cuckoo clock that used to come out and say rather strange things.
I remember the moose on the wall that used to talk.
Who's gonna answer the door?
You couldn't really tell exactly what they all were. There was kind of a dog and a sort of an elephant thing with big specs that never spoke. And you sort of knew their names, you know, because the names were in the song.
And here come the Banana Split.
How could you forget the Banana Splits? There was Fleagle.
Fleagle was the beagle and didn't wear glasses. I liked Drooper. Drooper I thought was, he was kind of the best character. I believe he was a lion, although I spent my childhood thinking that he was a bloodhound or something.
It's that big one with the big ass head, the big one, the big mouth. What was his name?
I never liked Bingo. He was kind of an ape, I suppose, now that I think about it. I'd never thought about that before.
And Sparky.
Bit of a mystery, really. Kind of an elephant or a mammoth or something. And they all wore firemen's helmets. No apparent reason.
Did the Banana Splits have a purpose?
It was just crazy. It was just them jumping about and throwing the rubbish out.
All right, Trooper, you answer the door.
During the Banana Splits, you know, they're doing pranks on each other and they're playing, and then it's the difference between watching, you know, one of those shows that's just so prissy and so clean and positive. You go, ugh, turn this thing off. You know, what's really going on? The Banana Splits was kind of fun.
It's amazing, you know, if you do something right, it never goes away.
In 1971, America got a new kind of hero. He was cool. He was sexy. He was Shaft.
Do-do-dum, do-do-dum, do-do-dum-dum.
that was by Isaac Hayes. And Isaac is just one of the brilliant, brilliant musicians who gave it that zip.
That was great, Isaac.
Who's the black private dick that's a sex machine to all the chicks? You damn right.
One of my best friends is going to have the theme from Shaft played at his funeral. His name's quite admirable.
Where's the music? Play the music.
Who is the man who'd risk himself for his brother man?
Shaft. Right on.
Can you dig it?
I was doing A Great White Hope in Philadelphia when my then agent said that they were casting for this MGM film Shaft. And a couple days later, I got a call back from the casting people and wanted to meet me, and I went in and I met with them, and he points to a picture on his desk. I looked at the picture and looked at it, I said, that's me. He looked at the picture and looked at me and said, That was it.
What did he tell you, Jeff? Stay away from black hunkies with big, flat teeth.
I was so excited that I had a job. I was going to be acting in a film. I mean, this was a major studio production, and I was going to be playing the lead. That was pretty heady stuff.
Prior to that, there really had not been any black films. This was a first, and it was done in such caliber, and it was done with such style. It was not done from a white perspective. It was done from a black perspective.
It was the first fairly big studio picture to cross over. You know, the whites and the blacks saw it. The blacks set it rolling, and the whites jumped on the bandwagon. Very important picture indeed, I think, in terms of black people in the cinema.
Get the coffee, man. Make mine black.
I don't know if you could say that it was made for a black audience. That is to negate a whole segment of society.
Every child needs role models and needs things to identify with. And if you appreciate, there wasn't that many for black kids at that time. So this was a major, major thing.
Man needs a little action.
The fact that he was the lead, like James Bond, or, you know, a kind of character who took no shit from anybody and was a, badass guy. It's very empowering to the black audience, as well as encouraging to the other young black artists.
And of course, today we have a lot of black stars, and I think that to a degree they owe it to Shaft.
Shaft had style, good looks, and a wardrobe to die for.
The flares, the hat, the big coats, everything about it had a really nice style to it. You know, it's not just a good storyline. You need a bit of that, but it's all the other bits and pieces that went through it. It made you feel, dare I say it again, cool.
Now you know why I smile all the time, baby.
The wardrobe was very conservative for the time, and the only thing that was a departure was quite possibly the long leather coat and the black leather suit that I wore. I'm fond of saying that I wish I had $1 for every leather coat that was sold after that.
Richard Roundtree in Shaft, and gorgeous. I can't even think about him nowadays without going all goose-pimply, because he was such a superb-looking chap.
He definitely was a pinup, and I also knew a lot of women who said, well, can you introduce me to this guy, because, he made, hearts flutter.
Shaft was big box office. 2 sequels and a TV series followed. Richard Roundtree was unknown before the film. Now everyone knew his name. He was Shaft.
Such a fantastic actor. One of my heroes, my heartthrobs.
It became kind of difficult to walk down the streets of Manhattan. At first, I was just loving it. It was great fun initially, but it starts to be a problem when you're in the grocery store and you're trying to. Yeah, sure. Just wait. Yeah.
Cigarette?
Thank you, babe. What else can you help?
Well, I'm off at 4 o'clock.
All over the world, no matter where I go, there is a tremendous interest in this character. And they know and can recite the lines from the music and recite the lines from the movie. It's amazing to me. I mean, you're talking 30 years later, and people just, hey, John Shaft.
Now, something completely different.
1, 2, 3,
In this world of crumbling standards, it seems as though only the clothing manufacturers stand between us and the ultimate permissiveness of absolute nudity.
No.
Of course, this year's hot fashion news was the arrival of hot pants. London's Whitted boutiques have had to really stock up to meet the demand.
Hot pants, although they may seem sexy in retrospect, they were desperately hard to wear.
Minis, middies or maxis in 71 skirts were out and hot pants were in.
It's a very rare woman who can sit around with that part of her body uncovered and feel comfortable.
I was known for hot pants. That was more or less my trademark. In fact, people still come and guys still come and say to me, oh God, I used to dream about you in these hot pants. Oh God, what you did to me.
Mind you, I'm not complaining. Like most other blokes, I'm easily converted.
They were sort of masculine in a strange way. Tennis shorts.
Hot pants were banned at Ascot and we were going to the Derby. And I thought, well, I better play it safe. And I think that was the first time my legs were covered.
New fabrics were coming into the market. They always seemed to end in lon, so I suppose it was nylon or draylon or something lon.
And if you're panting for more, take a look at the variety. Hot pants in all sorts of materials, 1 piece, 2 piece. Obviously, there'll be no piece till the craze dies down.
And they had a bit more flexibility and a bit more stretch to them, so you could do even naughtier and tighter things with the lons than you could previously.
One is always aware of wearing a skirt and how the lady should walk, sit, get in a car, get up, whereas you were a lot freer in hot pants.
I could never wear them. I never ever had a pair of hot pants.
They're not even content just to be cheeky.
You had to make sure that you had one leg up on something, otherwise you just sat there looking like blancmange.
Something for the girl with a man on her mind.
Changing fashions were reflected in changing attitudes on a big screen. Films began to shock with images of explicit sex and extreme violence.
I've just had a look at one of the pictures showing here men and women naked making love. Erotic and uncut, as the poster in there says.
That was the thing about the early 70s. I think it was the beginning of outrage, the beginning of shock, the beginning of this new power, and not to sweep stuff under the carpet.
In 71, one film more than any other exposed the seedy side of 70s society. Get Carter.
Towards the end of the 60s, the blinkers were beginning to come off, really. Up until then, it's always been sort of rather perfect. Certainly when I was making Carter, I contributed to the blinkers being removed.
There was a whole series of extreme films that I think probably couldn't have been made after the 70s were over. There were Straw Dogs and Clockwork Orange and Get Carter.
Get Carter would relaunch the career of one young actress in London. I played Michael Caine's girlfriend Anna. I would be remembered for one scene.
The most asked questions were always, is there nudity? Because at that time I was considered to be a sex kitten. Or sex kitchen, as Rod Stewart used to call me.
Can I phone London?
I'll cost you.
My favourite scene is the one with Britt Ekland and Michael and the landlady.
Hello?
I wish I was touching you now. Right now.
The production designer, for some inexplicable reason, put a rocking chair in the set. So consequently, I had this kind of funny, erotic scene which I was able to build up.
They were always very vague, or be very tasteful.
Britt's role was very small, actually.
You won't see much. It would be well lit. So you were sucked into it by those phrases.
Take your bra off. Now, hold them gently.
You know, to take your clothes off in front of the camera was just a horrifying thought. It just was.
We're not just looking at one thing here. We're looking at this guy, where his brain is, how he's missing this lady, how she's getting turned on the other end, how this woman in a rocking chair, I can't believe what's happening. And then there's a guy comes at the end, he's got no idea what's happened.
I want to stroke you and kiss you all over.
And if you have somewhere like Britt Ekland part of it as well, it's fantastic to look at as well, isn't it?
I wanted to be a serious actress. So I didn't like the tag, sex kitten. Looking back on it now, I think it's quite funny.
What's the matter? You got gut trouble or something?
Just doing my exercises.
Get Carter is the story of one man's crusade to avenge his brother's murder. He didn't pull any punches. It's a powerful and violent tale.
The thing that you remember about the film more than anything is just the sheer ruthlessness.
Pick up!
And the film seems to get worse as it goes on and goes on and goes on, and eventually he finds the one man.
It was you. It was you who poured it down, wasn't it? Hey, Eric? Hey! You can pass the bottle round when the car went over the top. Hey!
It's as if he'd worked out this horrific death, you know. You're too bad to die easily, you know. I'm going to torture you, and then you're going to go into the North Sea.
Goodbye, Eric!
Just so grim. It's like, you know, Japanese cinema or something. It's just something I don't remember happening in films without better reason than that before.
The ending, for example, would probably not be tolerated and certainly wouldn't have been in America. The whole point of the film is that the anti-hero is disposed of in exactly the same way that he disposed of other people. He's just, you know, dismissed, basically, just blown away.
Crossfire, the only game as exciting as its name. You've got to be good to score a goal. Good with a gun that fires real steel ammo, that hits the puck, that makes Crossfire the name of the game. And you've got to be fast to reload in seconds, to score and win. It's tough, it's exciting, and it's the only game called Crossfire. Ask for it by name. Crossfire. It's ideal.
Oh, the world was a dangerous place for children in 1971. It was their own fault. A craze began on the beaches of Spain that conquered every playground in the land. Anyone for clackers?
Petra and Shep aren't the only people, or pair, who like playing with a ball.
Clackers were an absolute phenomenon at our school. Every lass had a pair of clackers.
Oh, bloody hell. You just cut in when it happens to go.
You started with like a little gentle tap, tap, tap between the two.
Oh, I see. That's how you do it.
The idea was that you eventually got them spinning up above your wrist and hitting each other at the top, then underneath.
I've obviously lost my knack now.
Nowadays, you can't walk down any street without hearing this noise.
Weren't allowed to play with them in school, so they used to stand at the school gates and clack and chew gum until they broke their wrists or their clackers shattered.
They were noisy, but that's part of the appeal, was the noise. I mean, children like noise, even if their parents do not.
In fact, they're quite safe for me, because I can't make them clack at all. So we've invited our strongman friend, Walter Cornelius. Hello, Walter. Here we are. I think we better stop.
And although they're great fun, they've turned out to be extremely dangerous toys. The plastic balls have even been known to shatter and damage people's eyes.
17 types of clackers were scientifically tested, and the results were pretty alarming. This could happen to your clackers. Clackers may look safe, but after 20 minutes practice, the balls get quite a pounding.
Children were banned from taking them to school because not only because of the possibility of shattering, but the incredible noise. It soon generally became a very unpopular product with teachers, parents, and a lot of children who got themselves damaged by them.
It's not surprising clackers have been completely banned in Britain.
I remember coming to work one morning at the height of the clacker craze, and one of my colleagues said, "Have you got the clackers?" I said, "No, I always walk this way."
Loads of fun while they lasted.
In 71, country lads were supposed to know their place. One man didn't. He was stubborn, he was determined, and he came from Yorkshire. Remember Harvey Smith?
The 70s were a very Yorkshire decade. Leeds United, Freddie Truman, Jeff Boycott, Harvey Smith. I loved Harvey Smith for the fact, if you look in the dictionary to this day under irascible, it says C. Harvey Smith. He was so grumpy.
You only live once, and if you enjoy what you're doing, so what? It's my life, it's nobody else's.
It was a pretty posh sport, show jumping, wasn't it? By the way, what happened to show jumping? When I was a kid, Alvin Schockermoeller and David Broom, they were sports stars. What happened to show jumping? Did they make it illegal, like CB Radio?
The thrills, the spills, and what about that wall? Show jumping was big news in the 70s. It played to packed crowds and huge TV audiences.
Television-wise, it was a second sport to football, viewing-wise. So, I mean, from being just a baggy-ass sort of Yorkshireman with an old cart horse, suddenly I was launched into international career.
Television viewers by the million could tell you Harvey Smith's story. He's the former bricklayer from Bingley who gate-crashed the show-jumping world of the colonels and the county ladies, showed them 2 fingers for their stately homes, and galloped off with all the prizes.
He made no odds about the fact that he was determined to win. And if he didn't, he wasn't best pleased.
Are you an arrogant man? Well, I mean, you was a bit strong there, wasn't you, really? When you start talking about arrogance and conceit and...
Doer. Gritty.
You must think that you're better than anybody else, or you wouldn't keep going in there.
Bit miserable, bit difficult, bit violent.
Harvey comes out in his second jumping derby, and with it the richest prize in the world of £2,000.
The Hickstead Derby, 1971, the FA Cup of show jumping. Harvey Smith was about to deliver an extraordinary performance, a display which would outrage one man in particular.
Harvey, in my opinion, was one of the greatest horsemen of our time. He looks like a bruiser, but he could ride any horse, and he had beautiful hands if you watched him very closely, and that's why I used to get the best out of horses.
So the reigning champions away.
I sort of won the Derby the year before. When I landed down at Hickstead, I'd forgotten to take the cup back. And first person I met was Dougie Bunny. Said, "Oh, Harvey," said, "have you brought the trophy back?" "Jesus, Bunny," I said, "I've forgotten all about it, I haven't brought it." But I said, "Don't worry, I'm going to win it again."
He was having a bad time. He'd brought on 2 young horses too quickly, and he was having a bad time, and he was getting a bit depressed about it.
He said, "You've got no chance because your horse is lame and this, that and the other." And late on in the course, just nicked a rail down.
And it's gone, and he can't afford to make another one.
All the crowd in Dougie Bunn's box cheered. He sort of overlooked the main ring on top of the grandstand. It was looking down on us, you know. I mean, when he was up there, he didn't think he was God, but his representative on this earth, you know. But under my breath, I thought, you bastards, you know. But luckily for me that day, there was only one other horse had 4 faults, and that was Steve Hadley.
Very careful jumper, but it's gone. So that's a 8-fault chance for Harvey Smith.
despite knocking a fence down in his first round, Harvey was given a dramatic lifeline, a sudden death jump-off.
And off I went. I scuttled round at 100 mile an hour. My horse jumped clear.
And no problem there. So Harvey Smith has won it with 8 faults.
And when he jumped clear, I knew I'd won it. So I went past all his regalia and his crowd and one thing and another, and I had to give him a nice wave.
That was unprecedented. I mean, it's not the sort of thing that one expected to see around that particular sport.
Giving the fingers is so 70s as well. Not the finger, fingers. That's such a great thing to do.
Harvey Smith also loses the £2,000 prize money. Was this really justified?
The directors took this decision with the full concurrence of the judges as a result of the obscene gesture which you've just seen on that film.
I said to Harvey afterwards, I said, look, we can't have this sort of yobbism in sport.
And I don't know what that sign meant.
But the fingers is great because it's silent. And it was a great thing to do. You could give covert fingers to teachers like that, or overt fingers if you felt. So brilliant, and he did it, this great 70s gesture. And now only Liam Gallagher does it now, and I think we should reintroduce giving the fingers. It was a great thing.
Friendly gesture. Just a nice wave. At least you are remembered in life, aren't you? Not forgotten.
The 70s was all about outrageous musical talent. The Stones, Bowie, Bolan. But in 1971, they didn't sell all the records. In fact, the biggest hits came from bands you probably never heard of before. Or since.
Mother of mine, you gave to me all of my life to do.
Think about 1971. The charts were actually full of a lot of dross. After the sort of post-60s hippiedom, you'd sort of come into the 70s with no real direction, no look anymore. So Top of the Pops was full of all this novelty material.
One of the most difficult things to do in the recording business is make a comedy record. An even more difficult thing to do is to make a successful comedy record. It's nigh on impossible to get one to #1. But January, this year, he did it. Benny Hill and Ernie.
You could hear the upbeat pound as they raced across the ground.
I used to love Benny Hill. I thought that song was brilliant. I wish I'd recorded it.
His badge upon his chest, his name was Ernie, and he drove the fastest milk cart in the West.
Chirpy Cheep Cheep came at a time when you'd just come out of all this sort of heavy protest type songs from the Vietnam War and all this sort of thing, and along comes this little thing with lyrics which mean absolutely nothing.
Last night I heard my mama singing a song. Hooray, chirpy, chirpy, cheep, cheep. Woke up this morning and my mama was gone. Hooray, chirpy, chirpy, cheep, cheep, chirpy.
When we heard we were #1, we were in Copenhagen, and I was over the moon. I thought I must go down and let Sally know about this, because she didn't know.
I was just getting ready to get into my room to get ready or something when Ken came running up and said, "We're #1."
And she went, "Oh."
And it was shock treatment.
"Did you not feel something?" She said, "No." I said, "Well, let's celebrate. We'll go and celebrate."
I started to cry. And he said, we're #1. We're #1. I says, "I don't want to be #1. And he says, "But you're now the #1 singer in Britain. How does that feel?" "I don't want it. I don't want it."
Normally you'd take a bottle of champagne and have a good swig at the champagne. It was a glass of milk.
I suppose it's every young person's dream, and I didn't really want it all that much.
Let's go now. Last night I heard my mama singing a song. Hooray, chirpy, chirpy, cheep, cheep. Woke up this morning and my mama was gone. Hooray, chirpy, chirpy,
We had diaries which read like Germany one day, Austria the next day, Switzerland the next, South Africa the next, Israel the next, you know, South America for a week. It was real frenzy. And I remember my dad turning around and says to me, look, give it a year, go and just give it a year. And if it doesn't work within a year, he says, you can always come back.
Their first number topped the British charts, and now here they are with their latest number, Tweedledee, Tweedledum.
Do you recall some years ago, up in the mountains that were white with snow? Inside a cabin, MacDougal, he was planning, there's gonna be a showdown with somebody he loves. Well, he's been there. Singapore for a few days, Hong Kong for a few days, Japan. It was just crazy, absolutely crazy. I hear him playing his bagpipes every morning. I think that it's a warning. He's gathering the grand.
When we eventually returned, it was a year and something like a year and a day later. And my daddy was standing at the bottom of the stairs like this with his arms. He said, what did I tell you? And I just cried, and I'm going to cry again. And I just ran into his arms and gave him the biggest cuddle that I could ever give anybody. That was it.
He was fighting his rival Clan McGregor. His honor he would never, the tiring of his quest.
Thank you, middle of the road.
Introducing the new penny.
On the 15th of February 1971, there is going to be decimal currency and 100 pennies in the new pound.
LSD is dead and gone. Today is D-Day -1.
It was a big thing, the money thing. Big thing.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Excuse me, how are you getting on with decimal coinage?
Finding it very simple. I let them do the work.
That one there, that's...
Here, that's the 5.
That's 5p.
250s make a pound.
It's all right for us young ones, but it's for the old age pensioners that I feel sorry for.
10s make a pound.
This is the 10p one.
Yes, that's twice the 5p one.
25s make a pound.
Well, that's the equivalent of our 2-shilling piece now.
I remember telling my dad that I was really, really worried about the new money.
100 pennies make a pound.
And he said, listen, son, you're only 7. You don't have to know about the old money. You can forget that now. Everything you've learned, just learn the new money. And that was brilliant.
Here go the Corgi rockets, out of the super booster and up to top speed on the straight, through the triple loop, into the fantastic electric sky park, and up, up, up it goes. Now wait for it. Across the incredible Grand Canyon, up and over the Cloverleaf. See the fantastic Corgi rockets, the cleverest cars on tracks at any good toy store now in lots of great sets.
Once in the lead, there was no one to touch him. His 6 Grand Prix victories won him the World Championship for the 2nd time. It was a superb double in a hotly contested year and puts the name of Jackie Stewart firmly amongst the all-time greats of motor racing.
You won 6 Grand Prix, which is, you know, it's hogging it slightly. What do you... There's 7 Grand Prix is the sort of record. You're obviously hoping for this. Where do you think that you could have done it and it didn't happen?
I don't think that's a fair question.
The 70s were very exciting years. They were colourful years, they were fashionable years, they were trendy years. The world was recognising more sports people. even the Americans were recognising that maybe Hollywood was false and sport was reality. And I was part of that.
Becky!
The way he feels has a great effect on me. Well, this morning, he woke up and he said, I don't want to be disturbed. So then I get nervous because I'm doing things not sort of naturally, and I'm trying not to disturb him. Then you hear the people outside shouting, and you look out the window, you see the masses of people, you get the atmosphere. All of a sudden, my stomach goes round in circles.
Photographers were always round the wives, and there was three of us, Sally Courage and Nina Rint, and we were the sort of three glamour girls at the time.
Merci.
It's the presents you have to give away.
Was it present?
I'm trying to attract your
Oh, I
attention, but you
see.
think I've got another appointment.
Write it all out like a bird in the sky. Was write it all out like you were a bird.
Of course it's glamorous to take off and go to Rio de Janeiro, for example.
Part of the fun part was Barcelona.
Or when you went to Mexico for the Grand Prix, you always went to Acapulco.
Wear a tall hat like the druid in the old days. Wear a tall hat and a tattooed gown.
Whether it was Madrid or you're always in Paris.
And of course there was always Monaco.
Catch a bright star and a place it on your forehead. Say a few spells and baby there you go.
In those days, when you won the Grand Prix of Monaco, Helen would sit on the right of Prince Rainier and I would sit on the right of the Princess Grace. That sort of sounds like name dropping, but it's not, because it was part of being a Grand Prix driver.
To me, everyone I read about is famous, but I never think of Jackie being famous.
Wear a tall hat like a druid in the old days. Wear a tall hat and a tattooed gown.
And they were more impressed by, if you like, what I was doing. I certainly was impressed by what they were doing.
So when you get the power on here, feed it in nicely. As you go around the corner, be more progressive. Bring in the power stronger and stronger. But again, don't go way out here. Don't get here. Because again, you've got the gutter, and then you've got the curb. And you only need to clip the curb. And you've broken a wheel, or you've punctured a tire.
Keep in mind that in the 70s, the danger level was high, but so also were the rewards. And it was a time where there was an excitement and an awareness to that fulfillment in life that I think to some extent society over the years has tried to wrap up in cotton wool and overly protect.
It's very, very stressful for wives. Each month in the 1970, there was someone killed. I thought, well, it's just a matter of time.
If you raced 5 years as a Grand Prix driver, there was a 2 out of 3 chance you were going to die.
But what I didn't know, like I know today, was every time Jackie left the house, he'd be going up the driveway wondering if he'd come back.
I think I can take that sticky stuff off there.
We might make it bleed again.
Helen and I lost most all of our friends in racing car accidents. At that time, it was terrible.
A friend of mine, her husband, went to the moon, and she was asking me how I felt. And I said, well, it must be worse for you, because you're going into the unknown. You don't know. And she says, yes, but Helen, I've always wanted to say I made love to the man on the moon.
The idea of two young women living together, on their own, unmarried,
was still shocking in the early 70s. Well, that's what the Liverbirds did.
At you two, and we said no. And he said, so, how about writing about sharing a flat? And we said, yes, we'll do that.
Right. After Huskisson Street, this place is a palace. After Huskisson Street, anything's a palace.
There was something that Polly and I just totally clicked.
Yeah, well, we can't stand here all day, and you go. Oh, aren't you going to carry me over the threshold?
Two girls in a flat, talking quite saucily, quite intimately. I mean, you know, it hadn't been on television before. So easy to forget that.
Speaking of fellas, fancy that one with the hammer. What, the auctioneer? Yeah, he can knock me down any time he likes. I shouldn't think he's interested in job lots.
Beryl was very common.
Beryl? Oh, you remember my name then?
I'm afraid I think I was referred to as a scrubber.
Oh, you had a nice night, didn't you?
Oh, yes. I had it behind the settee, in the wardrobe and under the bed with my fingers in my ears.
Sandra was quite posh. Well, she thought she was anyway.
As a matter of fact, it was my hands he noticed. He said they were feminine and gentle. Your hands gentle? Yeah. Jerry's cat's had a limp ever since you stroked it.
She was also quite sexy, I think. I think I was. Well, from the letters I got, I think I was quite sexy. The thing about the Liverbirds was that it was very symptomatic of the age.
We are universal housewives and we really are to blame.
It was a very conflicting time because we had people like Germaine Greer telling us to throw away our bras.
Well, she's all you'd ever want. She's the kind I'd like to flaunt and take to dinner.
And yet, on the other hand, you bought boots up to your knees and had skirts up to your navel.
She's got grace. She's a winner. She's a lady. Whoa, 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 she's a lady.
And the two things fought against each other. I think actually the short skirts and the boots won out.
Now, midi or maxi?
I remember I cornered the market in a certain sort of woman on television who wasn't obviously beautiful but had a certain sexual drive about her.
Oh, here she comes. Sophia Loren.
Because I had a quite Italian figure with big tits and slim legs. They wanted to show that.
Young men say, oh, my mother used to let me stay up and watch you on Friday nights. Yes, yeah, and I was determined to have a flat like you.
What is it? When I'm old and grown up like you, I'm going to marry you.
We were kind of role models for that time. When you look back, you think, what role models? But of a sort we were.
If there was ever a television program everyone had to watch, it was the Generation Game. It had Brucey, it had the Cuddly Toy, and it had Anthea Redfern.
Life is the name of the game.
I didn't have a clue what was in store for me. It just all sort of took off and happened. I did odd little bits of modelling around Torquay and Devon, just locally. Then I ended up modelling in Paris, where I was seen, and they were looking for the girl for the Generation Game. And that's how it all started.
Ladies and gentlemen, the very, very gorgeous, the very, very lovely, here she is, the gorgeous Anthea Redfern. All right, darling?
I had started to become so known for what I was wearing, and then when it went on from the mini skirt and the hot pants into something more glamorous, and it became the beautiful flowing dress. Gradually the outfits just had to become just that little bit more glamorous each week as the show went on.
It's all black, by the way. This is with all the black and white people.
Haven't you put on a bit of weight?
Don't be silly, Bruce. He's a sort of jumpers.
Oh, well, I wouldn't have any more of them.
It was just one day I walked on stage and Bruce literally looked at me and he said, "Oh, I like it, darling."
More, they want more.
And he said, "Oh," he said, "you'll love the back. I wish you could see the back." And then he just came out with,
"Oh, do a twirl." Yes, you must.
"Give us a twirl, darling."
PC-wise, you think, she was just a model turning with a, you know, with a dress to show off.
She would come on wearing some voluminous caftan-style dress and then turn around, wouldn't she? And then go off, come back on with some hapless individuals from Uttoxeter.
We all thought she was beautiful, and we all thought, yes, please twirl so we can see the back of it.
I married a woman called Anthea, and so we would occasionally ask Anthea to give us a twirl, in which case she'd hit us.
Great fun. Of course, Bruce Forsyth was brilliant, still is. He'd got this way of being so rude to everyone.
Did you get up late?
Yes, just arrived.
Nice. You're a member of your local consumer group?
That's right,
Oh,
yes.
Just make a note of that. Alcoholic.
He does one thing, this geezer, doesn't he? In which case he says to people, now it says here on this card...
You are married with a baby? Yes. Just as well.
And Bruce would look at the audience with an expression that said, what a Burke, eh? And that was it. That was, I remember thinking, God, I could do that.
Nice to see you again.
To see you all together now.
Lovely.
It looked perfect, it looked glossy, but sometimes things went wrong, and it was usually the same thing most times, which was the damn sliding doors.
Yes, take the sliding doors away, please.
I always had the list in front of me, and I was sort of trying to say, goblin teas made.
A cassette tape recorder.
I remember we used to watch it and think, what do these things do? A fondue set, and I'd think, what could that be?
A fondue set.
What impossibly glamorous contraption could that be?
A wig from Vidal Sassoon's salon.
Table mats.
A roaster and toaster. An Alibaba basket.
Clock radio.
And a hot plate.
We always had the plate warmer. Nobody goes anywhere without a plate warmer.
A handbag.
All right, then.
2 doors.
So standby studio from the top in about 10 seconds.
People were gearing the whole Saturday around getting up, doing this, doing that, going shopping, and then home and tea on the tray in front of the generation game.
You couldn't avoid it, was unavoidable. Like the plague, it was unavoidable.
And I want to play the game with you.
See? I told you it was a mad year.
David Cassidy's Loving 1972 tomorrow at 10:45, and you can catch the best of Glastonbury tomorrow on BBC Choice at 7 p.m.
Hush not, child, and don't cry. Your folks might understand you by and by. Just move on up toward your destination.